Hi, welcome back to Centre Equestre La Douce and Live and Breathe Horses. So we're going on with our Words of Wisdom series with Classical Principles of the Art of Training Horses Volume 2. Today we're going to look at the chapter 2 about the legs of the rider. So many people have written a lot about the hands of the rider. But in most of the equitation books, very few have written about the legs. Most of the bad sensations we have in the hands come from the bad action of the legs. And this is a very important point. You know, people think, oh, my horse is heavy in the hand, or he's leaning on the hand. And the first thing to take a look at is how you're using your legs. You know, what are you creating with your legs you can't hold in your hands? So, yeah. Some people have a tendency to use too much pressure with the legs. I will try with a very simple explanation to make you lose the tendency to use too much legs. The horse breathes, and if the pressure of the legs is continued, he must then breathe with his chest contracted. The legs must be relaxed downwards near the horse, but soft, without moving. And they must touch by very short, quick instances. They must touch and relax, that is, touching, and if necessary, touch again, but only for a fraction of a second. I see most riders with their legs glued to the horse, with the heel always very well down, without being conscious of when they touch or not with the legs, and with spurs which are often placed too high. Obviously, when the legs are active in this manner, you cannot have a fine sensation, either in the rein or in the leg. And I think this thing about having the leg hanging down close, right beside the horse. So when you have a very sensitive horse, that your legs, you know, so close that the movement is very small when you bring the leg into contact with the horse's sides, that you don't surprise him, you know, or her. So what is also serious is that the rider does not realise that in pressing his legs so strongly that he contracts his back and makes an incorrect movement with his back. It's a vicious circle. And that's also true if you pressing too much with your legs, then you're contracting, as he says, contracting your back and holding and pressing with your body. And if you're using your legs to ask more movement from your horse and at the same time hanging on to him, you know, that's not, it's really counterproductive. I always have a thing with that with riders, you know, that I say, if somebody was holding you round the middle, holding you tight and said, now run, you'd say, okay, I'll run, but let go first. So, you know, the more soft we can be, we can use our legs, as he says, more accurately. We have a hope in hell of being in time if the legs are loose and soft. You know, when they're tight and contracted, we're never going to get the right moment. So, the legs touch quickly and lightly. But if you must give a more severe touch, say with the spurs, then if the spur is placed too high, you cannot have a subtle touch. So you need to put the toe of your foot down a little, and with the heel supple, the spur arrives on the horse as the fingers of a guitarist playing his instrument. Now this is a way with the spur I learned from my teacher. And like he says, you know, to lift your heel very slightly so it arrives, and it's a very light stroking, which can be the most subtlest touch, because when you think it's that very small thing touching with a small stroke, for me that's extremely difficult because my legs are too long. And of course with the Spanish horses they're not so big, so I think this really does depend quite a lot on the length of your legs compared to your horse. Also, if you have short legs, it's quite difficult to do that. And I think this way of using the spur is a very being lost or possibly lost art. So that's a whole other conversation perhaps. So in the shoulder in and the half pass, you must touch for one step only to allow the horse to step without being in a hurry. So So this is a big thing that you see a lot as a problem in the lateral work, you know, that you touch at the right moment when that foot's on the ground and it can be lifted, and wait, and touch and wait. And this, I think, is a big advantage to doing groundwork. When you do the lateral work from the ground and you can really see, touch and give, and keep your breath flowing, you know. And of course, when you're on top, you can feel it, but if you can from the ground see it as well, it really is a good practice that translates very well later to the ridden work. So in most cases, it happens that we press all the time and not always at a good time. This is the reason we see insufficient crossing of the horse's legs. We do not allow the horse the time to do the movement in cadence. Do not be convinced that the horse can arrive at a great level of lightness and impulsion if you think that the spur is only for the strongness of the legs. So that's back to what we were just talking about. So the finishing paragraph, there's a bit more here about the spur that we've kind of covered already. I'm going to skip to the final paragraph in this chapter. So in each art there are works which are immortal, works mediocre, and sometimes those which are abominable. Tricky word. In each case there were people who did it with a different attitude, and so it is with the riders. The system is not the same for everyone. So I think this is so true, you know, that you have to find your way, what works for you and what feels right. So thank you for listening, thank you for being with me today. I look forward to see you next time, and keep tuning into the light.